The merciless sun, like a hangman's eye, beat down upon the earth, scorching away the last traces of dew and leaving behind only a cracked crust. The wind, a mischievous rascal, stirred up clouds of dust, which invaded every nostril, a constant reminder of the dryness and barrenness of these cursed lands. The town of Dubrava, lost among monotonous hills, resembled a skeleton draped in faded fabric, worn thin by time. Life flickered here almost imperceptibly, like the faint glow of a candle about to be extinguished before dawn. Jacob, as was his custom, sat on the porch of the saloon, leaning against a rotten post. His figure, once imposing, now appeared worn down, crumpled by life like an old hat crushed in a hand. He was considered a drunkard, a failure, but this, as would soon become clear, was merely a mask concealing the truth. In his faded eyes, the color of weathered steel, lay a depth that few ever noticed. He downed his glass of whiskey in one gulp, wincing at the bitter taste. Whiskey was his solace, his silent companion in these long, drawn-out days that seemed endless. The past hunted him, much like a hungry coyote, a shadow, ready to sink its teeth into his throat at any moment. The day began peacefully, as it usually did. The sun slowly ascended into the sky, casting long, peculiar shadows. Jacob lazily watched Sheriff Hendricks, a stocky man with a face etched with wrinkles like an ancient map, stroll past, giving him a brief nod in greeting. It seemed that nothing would bring about any trouble. But the silence was deceptive, unstable. Suddenly, like the rumble of thunder, screams of horror shattered the peace. These were followed by a volley of gunfire. Jacob leaped up as if burned and saw armed men, like riders from hell, racing down the main street, their faces obscured by the brims of their hats. Raiders. Ruthless and bloodthirsty, they robbed and murdered, showing no mercy to women, children, or the elderly. There were few of them, but their wickedness made blood run cold. Fear, icy and tenacious, gripped the residents of Dubrava. People, like hunted animals, hid in their homes, peering at the world through narrow slits in the windows, whispering prayers for salvation. Sheriff Hendricks, drawing his trusty revolver, desperately tried to resist, but was instantly overpowered by the enraged attackers. Jacob, watching this gruesome spectacle, felt something inside him turn over, ripping away the last vestiges of peace. He saw the horsemen, insolent and ferocious, robbing the bank, tearing jewelry from frightened women, and mercilessly finishing off the wounded, sparing no one. Rage, like a long-forgotten fire, flared in his chest, burning from within. He was not a hero, and had never sought to be. Glory was alien to his soul. But he couldn't stand idly by while violence unfolded before his eyes, while his hometown was being murdered, plundered, and trampled. Grabbing the sawed-off shotgun that always hung behind the saloon door, like a loyal guardian, he rushed outside, towards danger. His hands trembled, and his head swam from the liquor he'd consumed, but his resolve felt forged from steel. The first robber, bursting from the bank with a bag full of loot, was felled by a point-blank shot. He collapsed to the ground, as if struck by an unseen force. Jacob, without hesitation, reloaded his weapon, feeling the adrenaline surge through his temples, clouding his mind, but sharpening his senses to the extreme. He moved like a phantom shadow, taking cover behind the walls of houses, using every projection, every stone as a reliable shield. His shots were swift and accurate, bullets finding their marks. The raiders, stunned by the sudden resistance, lost their composure. Their ranks thinned like leaves in the autumn wind. The fight was brief, lasting only a few minutes, yet it was unbelievably brutal. Bullets whizzed overhead, like angry bees, and the earth beneath their feet erupted in fountains of mud and dust. Jacob, a shadow emerging from the gloom, delivered a deadly blow. His movements, honed to automation, became the embodiment of lethal grace. It seemed that years, clouded by drunkenness and haunted by misfortune, had vanished from his memory, leaving only a primal instinct for self-preservation and a fury directed at the enemy. The last raider, realizing his accomplices were either dead or bleeding out, attempted to flee, saving his own life. But Jacob caught him. A shot, deafening in the sudden silence, shattered the peace of the place. The raider, struck down, fell to the ground, his eyes wide open, filled with unspeakable horror. When all was still, Jacob stood, leaning heavily on his sawed-off shotgun, his chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. His body ached with unbearable exhaustion, yet a strange, oppressive emptiness reigned within him. He had survived, but at what an exorbitant cost. The people of Dubrava, timidly emerging from their hiding places, stood frozen, as if bewitched, their gazes fixed upon him. Upon Jacob, the very drunkard who had single-handedly defended them from the savage bandits. Sheriff Hendricks, limping slightly, approached him. On the sheriff's face, furrowed with wrinkles, a bizarre mixture of disbelief, admiration, and bewilderment seemed to converge. "Jacob," the sheriff rasped. You saved us." Jacob remained silent, his gaze fixed unseeingly upon the ground. Words were utterly useless to him. He always preferred action to words. Once again, he found himself an outcast, yet simultaneously respected, feared, and despised. His actions had split the residents of Dubrava into several warring factions. Some saw him as a hero, others as insane, while still others, nursing grudges, thirsted for revenge. His name was whispered in dark alleyways, slowly transforming into legend. He had become a hero, holding secrets within himself, hiding his past and masking his inner pain. That day had changed Jacob's life. He still sat on the old porch of the saloon, sipping whiskey and watching the sunset. But now, in his eyes, besides weariness, a glimmer of hope appeared, like a spark of something new, something greater. And soon, she arrived in Dubrava. Sarah. A woman from the big city, she had come here to open a school. She was unlike anyone he had ever known. She didn't see him as just a fallen drunkard, a loser, but as a man capable of great deeds. She saw his tormented soul, his unbearable pain, his silent, desperate struggle with himself. Their secret meetings took place under the cover of night, when the city fell asleep. They whispered about many things, the past, what could never be returned, the hazy future, and fragile hope. Sarah believed in him, in his ability to be reborn, to change, to wash away his sins. She gave him what he so desperately needed, what he had been seeking for so long, acceptance and understanding. But Jacob's past, like a shadow, refused to let him go. One day, a stranger arrived in town. He was a tall, wiry man, with eyes as cold as home steel. He was looking for Jacob, and his gaze held a determination that chilled the very blood. The stranger, as it turned out later, was the very bandit whom Jacob had believed he'd shot directly in the head. It seemed unbelievable, but the stranger had survived, though he'd lost his memory. All he remembered was a burning hatred for the man who had taken everything from him. Now, he had returned for revenge. The tension grew with each passing day, like a steel band tightening around Jacob's heart. He was acutely aware of the deadly danger that loomed over him. Jacob desperately tried to protect Sarah, to shield her from the impending doom, but deep down, he knew it was impossible. And so, the day arrived. The stranger attacked. A fight erupted on the main street of Dubrava, right before the eyes of dozens, perhaps even hundreds, of onlookers. Jacob, with a weapon in hand, fought desperately, giving it his all, defending his life and his love. It was a brutal battle, unfolding in all its deadly splendor. Bullets whistled through the air like evil spirits, piercing the morning silence, and bodies fell to the ground, staining it crimson. Jacob, wounded, almost without strength, gathering the last grains of courage, still managed to stand his ground and prevail. The stranger, mortally wounded, collapsed at his feet, letting out a death rattle. Sarah, watching the events unfold, consumed by tears, rushed to Jacob. She embraced him, pressed herself against him with her trembling body, and wept bitterly, whispering that it was all over, that they had survived, escaped this nightmare. But at that very moment, as if from nowhere, people materialized. People whose eyes held more than mere sympathy. people who knew the truth about Jacob's past. People who remembered his involvement in another matter, one he had desperately tried to forget. A matter far more terrifying and bloody than this raid on the city, 100, 1,000 times worse. Escape was impossible. Jacob was arrested. Sarah stood aside, crushed and helpless. An icy dread solidified within her soul. She knew a trial awaited him, and then, prison. Perhaps, even death. As Jacob was led past, he suddenly stopped. His gaze, full of both pain and hope, locked directly onto Sarah. He held it there for a moment, as if trying to etch her image into his memory. A weak, bitter smile touched his lips. He knew he had made many mistakes, that he would have to pay for them in full. But he regretted nothing. A mysterious, quiet resolve shone deep within his eyes. He had lived his life as he knew how. He fought, he loved, he believed. He saw a reflection of hope in her eyes, and in that moment he knew, even if fate decided he had to leave, her love would remain with him, warming his soul in this cruel and lonely life. The sun descended slowly, painting the sky in crimson hues, like the brushstrokes of a great artist. Silence fell once more upon the oak wood, broken only by the quiet rustling of the leaves. Jacob was gone, but his memory lived on, transformed into a legend of the man who had once saved the city from a band of raiders. And, most importantly, his memory lived in Sarah's heart. Sometimes she would visit his old house. She'd sit on the porch, offering her face to the evening light, and gaze at the sunset for a long time. She remembered his smile, his gaze, full of quiet strength, his hands, capable of both embracing and protecting. And she believed with all her soul that one day they would meet again, that death was merely one of the steps on a long and eternal road.